Hello there everyone, it's Carol from the Crafty Emporium here. Welcome back to the second video for the Traveller's Ephemera pack. Excuse me, if you've only just caught this on YouTube, you might wish to know that there is actually another video that goes along with this, and what I will actually do is I'll group all the videos together relating to this project up in the playlists, which is what I tend to do with all of my videos. Is I tend to group them all together so that it's easier for you to find things. So you might want to have a look through the playlist and find the other videos to go along with this project. What I'm going to cover with you today is how we go about decorating the cover. But before I get into decorating, I want to talk to you about the magnets. So this flap here is actually magnetized, and so I've put the magnets here and underneath this part here. But I'll talk to you about the magnets that I use, because I get asked this a fair bit. Excuse me. About which magnets I tend to use, and I use a variety of different sized magnets, but it's the I think you say neodymium magnets, I could be wrong, the earth neo, yeah. So this particular one that I'm going to be using is this size. Now it's actually, and I measured it, it's 11 millimeters in diameter. I think that's right, yeah, diameter. But the actual depth of it is only 0.5 millimeter. So if I hold this up closer, you can see it's quite a thin one. And the reason why I like... Dropped it on the floor. I'll go looking for that in a bit. Get another one. So the reason why I like the 0.5 millimeter thick magnets is that I like my papers to be fairly smooth. I don't want them too lumpy and bumpy, so I tend to go for the 0.5 millimeter thick ones. But in terms of its diameter, I will actually go for anything from a 5 millimeter to a 6 millimeter, and then I get these bigger ones for when I'm doing the likes of mini albums and things. Now I'm actually going to be attaching two to this flap because it's quite a large flap, and also be very careful when you're using these magnets because you can get your fingers trapped between them quite easily, especially if they're extra strong ones. But as I say, this flap is quite a long one, this little sticky out bit here, so I'm actually going to be using two. Now you don't want them stuck right near the edge of the flap. You want them a little way in so that the paper has room to just bend over the top of the magnet and go up to the edge of the flap of the file folder. So you want them a little way in, but you don't want them this far in because otherwise it will miss the front cover completely. So it's about finding the right position of where they need to go. Now I normally use, well, in fact, I'm not even going to take the lid off. I normally use my glossy accents to glue them in place, but I have a slight problem. I was cleaning out the nozzle earlier and I poked a hole where there shouldn't be a hole on my nozzle, and so every time I try and press glue out of it, it's going out the side. So I can't use that at the moment, so I'm going to try using my Tombow glue. So I'm just going to put a little dot of glue hither and thither, so that will sit there and that will sit there. Okay, no, please don't move. Hold you down with that. And then I use my micropore. Now you could use washi tape, but I do like my micropore, and I stick a piece of micropore over the top because I think it's just an extra double hold to hold it in place. I've waited all day to film this because the sun has been really bright today, and I thought I'll wait until early evening when the sun will have gone round the front and the side of the house. And look what's happening. Look, sun's out. The sun'll come out tomorrow. No, I can't sing. Okay, so it acts as a double whammy, this micropore. As I say, you can use washi tape. Is it now helps to hold that magnet in place whilst the glue sticks, but it now also acts as a barrier for the next magnets that we're going to put on. So peel them off carefully, and remember that magnets have a north and a south. So if I try and put the wrong sides together, it does that, it repels them. And if it's the right sides together, then they'll stick to each other. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a dab of glue on each one of those. And then I'm going to stand my file folder up, and I'm going to bend it round as though it's going to sit on the front, so that the glue that I've used will act as a marker. So there, please, and there. So I don't know whether you can see because of the sun, which wasn't here a while ago, but I've now got 2 marks where my glue was. And so what I need to do is carefully slide those magnets off, flip them over, because remember I've got to have the 2, whether it be positive or negative, being able to face each other. And then get my micropore again and just place some over the top of those 2. So now it means that, yay, it works. So now they're in the right place, and it means now that it's, sorry about the shadows. Hang on, I wonder if, oh, that's better. So that is now holding that flap in place. Now at the moment it makes a lovely clicky sound, but we've got to remember that we're going to have, just pull them apart, a piece of decorative paper on there, a piece of decorative paper on there. So you're actually weakening, the more layers you put on, you're weakening the strength of the magnets between each other with the amount of layers that you're putting on top of each other, so that it won't make that sound all the time. All right, now then, put them to one side. I have already pre-cut some of my papers, and I used the plain one with the dark border around it, just because I thought that by the time I've added any of the decorative pieces on there, which one's that? That's the back cover. Let's get that one. By the time I've added any photographs and things on there, you're not going to see this part anyway, so it doesn't matter about that being plain. Now then, because your file folder might be a different size to mine, you might need to measure your own file folder, because your measurements might work out differently to mine, but I'll show you how I did it. So basically we need to measure the face widthways and lengthways of the file folder. So from the crease to the edge was 6 3/4 inches, and I've taken 1/4 inch off. Now if you can't do that in your head, I do it with my ruler sometimes. So I go, right, okay, so 6 3/4, I want 1/8 on this side, and I want 1/8 of an inch space on that side. So from 6 3/4 I'm going to take 1/8 off and 1/8 off, so that's 6.5 inches. And then when I measure the depth of it, it's 6, let me just have a look, 6 7/8 inches, 1/8 of an inch and 1/8 of an inch. So that means it needs to measure 6 5/8 high. Is that right? Let me just do that again. Get my ruler lined up. So 1, 2 notches down, so that's 6 5/8 inch, or 6 3/4 inches, whichever. It depends how much of a border you want around it really. So I've already cut mine out, and I cut mine to 6.5 inches wide to 6 3/4 inches deep. And I inked up the edges of the paper because I printed it onto white cardstock, and I wanted to be rid of the white edge of the card itself. Now I printed it onto card because I want to be able to give the file folder itself that little bit more extra body. So if I printed it onto paper, it wouldn't give the cover itself the extra sort of support really. So I printed it onto about anywhere between a 120 and a 160 GSM cardstock. Just plain white, nothing overly fancy. And so I've done that to stick on the front cover. Now I've done the same for the back, but the back was just fractionally wider. So I cut the back piece 6 3/4 inches wide by 6 3/4 inches deep. Or I would have done if I'd cut it correctly. Oh, mice and men. I actually cut it a fraction too short. But I thought, don't worry about it, Carol, because we're putting a pocket on this bottom bit down here. Now, when I cut out this front cover piece, I'd got some pieces left over. And so I've used that piece, which will act as my pocket on the back side. Okay, so I don't like wasting my card too much. So I've actually cut the pocket piece to be 7 1/2 inches wide by 4 1/8 inches deep. And you'll see why in a moment. Okay, so to just go through it again, the front cover mat is 6 1/2 inches wide by 6 3/4 inches deep, and the back cover mat should be 6 3/4 inches wide by 6 3/4 inches deep, even though mine isn't. And I'm going to stick those in place, which now means also that I'm going to cover those magnets over. Okay, let's get this front piece stuck on. And I'm just using my Tombow glue again. Always get that first little globule bit. And I inked the edges up with walnut stain. So I'm just checking the borders to make sure that I've got them nice and even. Okay, and apply a little bit of pressure there, and that's the front cover in place. And then I'm going to do the same for the back, bearing in mind that because I cut it short, I need to make sure that I have got it up against the top edge of the file folder. So I'm going to put it up to this top edge up here, and that's where I'm going to check my border is up here. I'm ignoring this bit at the bottom. Okay, and I also need to check to make sure that they're lined up across there as well, so that it all looks nice and even. See, it doesn't snap, it doesn't make that snapping sound now. It just makes a click. And we've got another layer to put on yet as well. Okay, so this piece for the pocket, I decided to keep the top dark edge as the top of the pocket. So this will be the bottom edge where it's palest. Now, just bear with me because I've stacked a load of stuff on top of my score pal. Just need to get rid of it. There we go. Alright, so as I say, for this back pocket piece, it measures 7 1/2 inches wide and 4 1/8 inch deep. So on the 7 1/2 inch wide, I'm actually going to score it at 3/8 of an inch. And at 7 1/8 of an inch deep. Okay, so we've now got 3/8 of an inch on each side. All right, 1, 2, 3, yeah. And then I'm going to spin it round a quarter turn, and along this pale bottom edge here I'm going to score another 3/8 of an inch. So let's have a look. So that's 1, 2, 3, so that would be 3 3/4. And then I'm going to fold those over and burnish. Fold that over, burnish that, and as I'm folding them over I'm unfolding them again. Okay, and then magnets have stuck to my scissors, get off. So I'm going to just, if I cut it out square in that corner there, that's 2 cuts that I've made, but I can actually make it easier by trimming off at a slight angle. Okay, so I'll do the same at this side. So instead of cutting it square, I'm going to cut it at a slight angle up into that corner point, turn it round, and again cut into that corner point at a slight angle. So it now looks like that, and then I'm going to taper that top corner up there as well. And having the flaps on the side and on the bottom like this help to make a pocket have more space so that you can put a few more things on. I'm going to fold that side piece in, and then I'm going to put a little dab of glue on the bottom there, and I'm going to put this side one in as well. Put a little dab of glue on that side one there, so that when I fold that bottom one up it should adhere to the 2 side flaps. And then we're going to put glue on all 3 of those flaps, on the side, along the bottom, and on the side. Open this out, and then this will sit just nice and snugly on the bottom. So that back piece has now got a pocket on it. So that's the magnets covered, the front cover, the back cover, and the pocket. So now I'm going to show you how I'm going to mat both the front and the back side of this flap, and I'm going to use the patterned background paper. And what I'm going to do is that needs to sit that way on. So I'm going to sit it like that, and then I'm going to flip it all over so that I can draw on the back. And I'm going to make sure that this fold line is up against the edge of the card, and then I'm going to draw around it because it's an unusual shape, and even if I use my envelope punch board it's probably not going to match up against the shape of the flap itself. Okay, so what I'm now going to do is I'm going to cut inside that pencil line very, very carefully. Just chop that a little bit out of the way, so then I can go round that corner. And can you see I'm using the very far end of my blade of my scissors to just cut around, and as I say, I'm cutting on the inside edge of that pencil line. Now you could use your paper trimmer again to just cut off, say, that long straight edge and part of this edge, and then just trim away some of the excess to then make it easier to just cut around the curve. So this is going to be difficult to cut round now because all of this is in the way. So I'm just going to trim it down and get rid of that excess. And now I can trim around that corner and down to the bottom. So I'm doing really nice long smooth cuts. And now I can check that that's correct and just make any alterations that I feel needs to be there. But I'm happy with that. I've just missed that corner a little bit. By the time I've inked it all up, it'll be fine. What I'm actually going to do is I'm just going to ink the edge up. To get rid of that white core again. And I'm just going to put that piece to one side. That bit's for the inside. Now I'm going to use, that was the side that I cut, because you can tell from this bit, so I'm going to use this edge now, so that I've always got a nice straight edge. And I'm going to sit it on top of what is going to be the front part of the flap. And I'm going to flip it over. And I'm going to make sure that that fold line is lined up with the edge of the cardigan, and draw around it with my pencil. And I'm making sure that I've got a really nicely sharpened pencil and I'm holding it upright, so I'm not holding it at any kind of an angle, because as soon as you do that you start to create a space between what you're drawing around and your pencil line, and then you'll end up with something slightly bigger. So now I'm going to cut this one out. So I'm going to cut along there, and then I'm going to chop this excess off just to make it easier to cut. And I'm cutting on the inside edge of that pencil line, and as I go around the corner I'm just keeping my blade still, closing it ever so slightly to cut around the corners, and I'm using the far end of my blade, and then I'm doing really nice long cuts, but not right the way to the very tip of the scissors. And now I'm just going to check again that I'm happy with that fit, which I am. So again, I'm going to ink that up. And then I'm going to put my Tombow glue on the back. Around all the sides. Got a bump there. And some down the middle. And that will sit on that front bit. Now flip it over And do the same with this backside piece. Okay, so that's what it now looks like. So I'm going to leave it like that for this video, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye for now.